Pastor, finally, we made it happen. Pastor Frank Coleman, a community leader in Yonkers, today is here to talk about another pandemic that we have in America and everywhere, racism. Racism is not extinct, it's alive and kicking.
Yes.
I believe that in a way racism has been masked. We don't see it as much, but that does not mean it's not there. Good morning, Pastor.
Good morning. God bless you.
Good morning. Pastor, give us a little introduction about yourself. Tell us about you. Which church do you belong to? So our audition can know who you are and your involvement in the community.
Yes. I am, of course, Frank Coleman, and I'm pastor of the Messiah Baptist Church. It's on 76 Warburton Avenue, right in the heart of Yonkers. And I've been there for 4.5 to 5 years. Grateful to be able to serve as their under shepherd. And we're grateful for the work that we're able to do to serve our community. We have worship that's of course, we're in the pandemic, and so we're closed right now, but we worship on a regular basis at 11 o'clock on Sundays, and Sunday school is at 9:45 usually, and then we have Bible study on Wednesday. I also do a little Pastor Frank Faith Facts every day to share with everyone, to give an encouraging word during these days and times. I'm also the president of the NAACP. Some people do know that, but some don't. So I'm also in that leadership role, trying to stand up for right and justice for everyone. And we just are grateful to be able to share with you.
Now, Pastor, we have a pandemic going on today with the COVID-19, where unfortunately Blacks and Latinos are very big number of the fatalities. But we also have another pandemic that is being going on in America and around that I call racism. Mm-hmm. How you feel about that?
Well, sadly, you're very accurate. That's prevailing in the midst of our time, and it has also been there forever. I mean, I think you think about it, you look at the history of it, we know that racism has been here from the very beginning of the onset of America. And we have had levels and history of attempts to try to confront it and even try to dispel it, but at the same time, it continues to rear its ugly head, and every time it rears its head, it seems to be worse.
A man once said that we need to reach the mountaintop. Have we reached it?
Oh man, the mountaintop of racism, I don't know. Every time we think that we have reached it, and even sometimes, when we think about pandemic, for example, we talk about, and one of the things that they always talk about in the pandemic is the flattening of the curve. And every time we think that, maybe we're getting to a point where there's going to be a flattening of the curve, or it's going to go back in the other direction, something happens to remind us that racism is still moving in the direction of the apex, rather than going in the other direction. So it's frightening. I'm really concerned in light of the fact that people who have not reared their ugly heads in racism in the past now are emboldened. And so it seems like it's getting worse rather than better.
Why, Reverend? Why do they now feel that they are emboldened? What changed? What changed that makes the racists feel like now they can come out of the rat holes, and do whatever the instinct tells them to do? Do they feel protected by someone or something?
Well, that's an interesting question. And the answer is it's it can be complicated when people, you try to talk about that and people are complicated and everybody goes, oh, come on. Is it the president? Yes, it is. Okay. Let's stop playing around and stop playing games and understand that the leadership of your country, the leadership of any nation is going to dictate the atmosphere of that country or that nation. And we have people who in the previous 8 years did none of these things. And then suddenly in these last 3.5 years, we have seen racist, white supremacists, we've seen them emboldened to just literally do absolutely atrocious things. And they feel that they can get away with it. Why? Because it seems as if the leadership of our nation is all right with it. You talk about Charlottesville, you go down the list of the things that have taken place, that there were key moments when he could have said the right thing or stood up in the right way. It didn't happen. He spoke. There's good people on both sides. You mean a racist is a good person? Really? So let's just be honest. The president is number one on the list.
Reverend, I remember before he was elected, I was watching a rally, Donald Trump rally, where a black guy was assaulted by a white man, an older white man. As the black guy was being removed from the stadium, the president screams, "Don't worry about it. We will handle the legal fees." What example? Those few little words are setting up the stage for what is about to come ahead. He gave an example of his mindset.
Yes.
Okay. And I remember when President Obama was in the White House, I remember how much he was criticized when the young Martin was killed in Florida. And he said, he could have been my son. The right wing had a feast that day, that week, that month.
Yes.
That the president should not get involved in the legal system and let the legal system take its course.
Right.
All of a sudden, we have somebody else now that is doing exactly the same or more.
Yeah, because he's tweeting. He tweets it. So he does it so much more.
Exactly. So he's giving an example and telling people that that is acceptable. When he calls racists good people from the other side, that's a terrible statement.
That blows my mind.
It blows my mind.
It really does. It blows my mind. And then the other thing is too, of course, a part of the emboldening is that you have the president who makes statements, who in his rhetoric he shares. I mean, you think about whether he meant it or not. Just last week, with the reporter who was asking him a question, and he responded by saying, "Ask China." Now here we're talking about a lady who is Asian descent. You can tell, you know who she is, and you say that at that moment to that person, and you don't think that that's going to have an effect with the people who support you, the white supremacists who stand by your side and go rah rah. You don't think that they're somewhere going, yeah, tell them, President, and you embolden them now to walk around. I mean, with the pandemic, we have persons who are of Asian descent being talked about, ostracized, criminalized because of the pandemic. Because what? The president says, it's China's fault. And so automatically, what do the people do who are racist? not sensible people, but the people who are racist say, all right, now we can go get the Chinese.
But you know, Reverend, lots of people say, well, he didn't mean it that way. What people don't understand is that we do not live in the president's brain. We don't know what he means or don't mean. What we know is what he says or doesn't say.
Exactly.
And in this country, and any country, even in our own, homes, we teach our kids that words do matter.
That's right.
Be careful on how you express yourself, because what you say might come across differently. And very often what we say is not what you hear. I might say something else, and you might hear something else. Correct. So presidents, above all, should be very careful with the things that they say, because they lead a nation. They represent the nation. And when a president speaks, he speaks on behalf of the nation.
Exactly.
So to the masses out there, he's speaking as a representation of what the country feels. And he's dead wrong.
That's frightening. And the thing about it is that that's even about all leaders. I myself, as a minister, I have to make sure that I understand that I'm not going to be looked at on the same level as the average individual in a situation or circumstance. I know I have to have higher standards and have to have more control and make sure that I'm mature. Why? Because I'm representing the God that I serve. I'm representing my church. I'm representing my community, and I'm representing my ethnic group. And so with all of those things, if I'm going to be a leader who's out of control, who says whatever he feels like saying, he or she feels like saying, and just ostracizing people the way in which I do, guess what? The people who support me are going to, first of all, feel emboldened that they can do the same. And the people who see that that is the way I am lose respect, not only for me individually, but then they begin to lose respect for the office. So all of a sudden you hear, oh man, that's what I'm telling you about those pastors. That's what I'm telling you about those reverends. They're terrible. Well, guess what? They're saying the same thing about presidents of the United States. Just because of the actions and the attitude and the decorum of this president.
You are so right. Look, I look at myself. I am just a guy with an iPhone that loves to do what he does. Okay, I like to go around, film raw news. I try not to be on this side or that side.
Right.
Okay, I film what I film, and it's up to my audience to reach their own conclusions. But even though sometimes I get emotional because I see things that truly upset me, which was the case with the supermarket the other day. So I got emotional.
Right.
But I try to control what I say, because I have a very large audience. And when you have a large audience, people start believing in what you say, and they don't even do research about the things that I say, which they should always do.
And they should do that, right?
They should do. So people that have a large audience, large followers, they have a responsibility as well. As you said, you have one, I have one, but the president has the biggest responsibility.
Oh my goodness.
Because he leads the most powerful country in the world. Okay, I remember he's saying that he's going to make America great again. I don't know what he means, because what he says and what he means, it's something else.
Yeah.
So I'm very afraid that the Make America Great Again means something that we really don't want to go. Okay, I don't know about that, but it's scary. It's scary, sir.
Yeah, it really is. It's frightening that we're finding ourselves in a time that the leadership of our country perpetuates this hatred and racism, and then says, oh no, that's not what I meant. That's not where I'm coming from. And here's the thing. rarely does he even say that. He says what he says, and he leaves everyone else to come to his defense, to keep him from, being totally looked at as this is actually the direct language that he's used, and this is directly what he meant. But instead, others will come to his rescue, share, and say, no, that's not what he meant. And the reality is exactly what he meant. People wouldn't be doing the things that they do and be emboldened as much as they are. But it is what it is. We have to be responsible and do what we need to do, and that is get out and vote in November.
That's right. The president of the United States works a little bit like Zoom. As you know, the Zoom and Facebook, when we stream, there is a 20 seconds delay.
Mm-hmm.
With the president of the United States, there is a 3 to 4 hours delay. When he speaks, we need to wait a few hours until somebody comes back out and tell us, this is what he really meant.
Right.
So
that's interesting, but you're right. It's like Zoom, and they come out, and the pundits will come out, and the press secretary will come out, and everybody's got to share those 3 hours later what he really meant.
Well, which sometimes I really think that what he really meant was what he said in the first place. Right. But then his team sees the impact of how, of what he said, and they try to come and do some PR work, to smooth things out. Yeah. But Reverend, some people tell me, you know what, you guys keep talking about racism, whites doing this and whites doing that. What about black racism? Are you telling me that blacks are not racist? I said, no, blacks are not racist. We don't have the power to be racist. Okay, racism is when one race believes that they are superior to another, and they use all the tools around them to suppress the other race. We are not racist. We just counterpunches.
That's all.
What do you think, sir?
That is 100% my view as well, is that there is no way you can continue, and I hear that all the time, especially as of late, that we are racist or blacks are racist, and that's impossible. We're not the ones in power, number one. And number two, do your history. Look at how our people were snatched from Africa, snatched from their homeland, brought here in ships, packed like sardines, in chains, in deplorable conditions, had to suffer through all of that, defecation on them, nothing they could do. They survived that terrible trip all the way to America. Then you get them here and you do everything that is deplorable to them, other than you make sure that they grow your crops, you make sure that they build your homes, you make sure they even nanny your children while you rape our mothers, you ostracize and degrade our men. You sell them as property. And let me just make mention of that, because I heard someone say it was 1/5 human. It's 3/5 human, all right? But still, it's not human. And the reality is that that's the way in which we've been treated. And you go through all of the other things. I mean, I'm not going to go into all the history. I just want to touch a little bit of that. But if you go through history and understand systematically how this has happened, then you have to understand you can't call us racist. We've been enslaved, hung, lynched, Jim Crow, separate, supposed to be separate but equal, and it was separate and unequal. The new Jim Crow, mass incarceration, the new strategy to keep us second and second-class citizens. All of these things are systematically set up, and it's been going on forever, and it's still going on. And so we're only responding to racism. You can't call me a racist, and all I'm doing is trying to protect myself from the racist.
Reverend, we have a beautiful document in the United States, but I think that document is outdated, taken out of context. I'm talking about the Constitution of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
When they wrote on it, every man is created equal. I don't think the blacks were part of that ideology. We were not men back then. We were animals.
We were 3/5 human. We were not human. We were not human. So the Constitution, and here's the thing, and it's not new. It's not surprising. Everybody already knows the Constitution was written by slave owners. Slave owners, slave masters. Are you serious? They weren't writing the Constitution to put it together for the slave. They were putting it together for those who they deemed human. And with that being the case, absolutely. Think about all of that we're going through. Why are we struggling? Why do we continue to struggle as a people all through all of these generations? Because the Constitution was never written for us. So we will continue. Even the amendments, you make amendments. What they do is they make amendments and then they make amendment in their system. So I'll give you the Voting Rights Acts of 1960 in the 1960s. I'll give you that. Then I'll figure out another way to suppress your vote. Okay? Because we're in charge of the system.
I had an interview with Damon K. Jones the other day, and the subject of the interview was also racism in America.
Mm-hmm.
He feels that racism was never masked. It was always here. Well, I didn't mean that the racism was done and gone. I said masked, which means it was always here.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't as visible as it used to be.
Right. And again, I agree with both of you because I happen to hear the interview. Both of you, I agree. Racism has always been here, and there are those, which we see it even now, who are not afraid to just show it. But in a system that has all of these people, all of the multiplicity of individuals from multiple cultures and what have you of this nation, you want to at least seem like you're accepting of everyone. So what happens is that when you go through, for example, we talk about the civil rights movement and you have all of the fighting for rights and what have you. And let me just say, I'm grateful to grow up in that time. I was a kid growing up at that time and was grateful to see the battling and the fighting for rights. But the reality is that as much as we were battling, those little amendments that were made did not make a great difference. Why? Because the Constitution itself was never made for us. And so it does look masked because, we did this amendment for you guys. No, you didn't. We know you didn't do it for us. You did it to make yourself seem as if you are better than what we know you are. And
that's the masking that I'm talking about.
Exactly. So that's all it is. It's not that, and guess what? We're not ignorant. We know better. So guess what? We have to continue to battle. And that's what happens. And we have to continue to stand up for right and righteousness and justice. And then you get to the point where you have many who will say, enough is enough. Haven't you asked for enough? Well, we can look around this nation and see that enough is not enough because we're still being killed. We're still being disenfranchised. We're still being left back and kept back. You see this constantly and consistently. And so we have to continue to stand up. Now, what the point is that we have to have those who are in authority to get their lives together. And what I mean by that is, listen, racism can begin to stop or go in that other direction if white folk stood up. See, because you're the one who's in power, you stand up against racism sincerely in your policies, in your actions, in all of those things. We have, that's where the problem is that all of us together are not standing up.
Now, let me, as you know, we are live streaming, so I have to interject here. Dagan Exposito says, Trump didn't create racism. Who is responsible for racism in Yonkers? Rockland, New York City? How do we stop it? Well, Dagan, if you can show me a quote here that we said that Trump created racism, then I will tell you, look, I apologize for that statement. We should not have said that.
Correct.
I didn't hear the Reverend or myself saying it today or ever before that Trump created racism. I think we're all smart enough not to make such a stupid statement.
Exactly.
But to me, Trump is a racist. And there is many racists here in America, the KKK group, they're racists, but they did not create racism. But they still think that the whites are superior to the black. Correct. Who created racism? To me, right now, it's indifferent because there is nothing we can do about that. But we can do something today to eliminate further racism in America and everywhere else in the world.
Exactly. And the thing about it is, for that gentleman, why not, instead of standing up for Trump in saying he didn't create racism, and we know that he didn't, everybody knows that, we did not say that. Number one, how about hearing this conversation with more compassion and concern for those who are being ostracized and who are discriminated against, and stand up with us to stand up for what's right when it comes down to racism. Because guess what? If Mr. Esposito, I think you said his name was, if he was standing by me, okay, then things could begin to change rather than trying to find an excuse. Because see, what happens with people, they don't realize when they show us that they're not as loving and compassionate to what we're going through as they want to purport that they are. So they look for the negative in what we're sharing when we're talking about our pain. We're not talking about the ugliness or calling someone ugly for no reason. But guess what? We were ugly for no reason. Yep. Stand up with us.
And Reverend, one thing that I think we need to make it clear is that we, people of color, we are not asking for any special favors. We are not asking for special privileges in America or any place else. All that we are asking is for equality, be equal to the others. We want to be treated in the same ways as they treat somebody else. Mm-hmm. If I'm not ready for a particular job, then don't give it to me. But it would be unacceptable to me that you tell me, no, you cannot have that job, not because you don't have what you need to do that job, but because of the color of your skin. That's where the problem is. According to me, that's racism, because of your color, because of your power, you can oppress me because I'm a black man and you're white. We don't have that kind of power to to show that we are superior to the white.
Well, here's let me give you an awesome example of the power that the white man has over against the black man, okay? here you're talking about, for example, we've been enslaved, Jim Crow, discriminated against, shot. All of these things have happened to us time and time and time again. And so that in itself makes us a desperate people. I always talk to my people and say to them, listen, in spite of the way in which the world is, and this nation is racist against us, we have to, because we still have responsibility, we have to rise above the desperation, the desperate, because when you're desperate, you act desperate. Now, with that being the case, I may be acting desperate, but the one who oppresses me can take my desperation and make me look like I'm wicked, I'm a thief, I'm a killer, I'm doing all of these things because I'm just an animal. When I'm not just an animal, if you were in my shoes, you would be doing the same thing because you would be what? Desperate, because you're trying to not have yourself killed, have yourself destroyed, having yourself wiped out. So you end up doing some desperate things. I always encourage our people not to do desperate things, but to rise above it and stand and win in spite of it. But with that being the case, we're going to have plenty of people that's going to be desperate. And what do? The oppressor has the power to call our desperation that we're crooks, that we're thugs, that we're all of these things. Why? They do not want to understand that what those things we're doing is out of desperation to be free like them over against the things that they claim that, you talk about our race, you got 50% of African Americans that's locked up in jail, all right? Oh, they're the worst thing in the world. But guess what? Do your homework. They're not the worst thing in the world. They're just the ones who gets locked up and the key gets thrown away. Check out the statistics from the FBI, where 69% of the people who get arrested are white. But 50% of the people who get locked up in jail and kept in jail are black. Why? The system, money, resources, and you have the privilege of the Constitution that works for you, but not for the black man.
And that's the principle behind the bail reform. But before we get to bail reform, Reverend, let's talk about specific cases where I see a lot of examples about racism in America. We had Micah Brown's case. We have Martin in Florida's case, Aubrey in Georgia, and many others, okay, many others. When a crime is committed that the victim is a black person, the white community, again, I'm not talking about every single white, okay, I'm talking about the white community in general. They come out looking desperately for justifications for what the white folks did.
Right.
They look at even at the grades in grammar school. See, he did this when he was on second grade. He did this at high school. He did this and that. But if it happens to a white, they come and say, let's wait for the facts.
Yeah.
Let's not rush into conclusions. Let's not do this. Let's not do that. Let's let the system handle it. Well, we don't have a fair system. Like that's with the Aubrey that just got killed in Georgia 2 months ago. We are just finding out about it because the video came out.
That's right.
Now
and
they
had not been for that video, we would not know anything about it. Not only would we not know anything about it, justice would not be attempted. Because justice, we still don't know if justice is going to be served even after this.
Exactly. So now they desperately showing the man walking to a construction site What could he have done? Stole a nail, a box of nails?
Right.
And even if he stole anything, how does that justify a shooting?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It does not justify shooting a man in cold blood. It doesn't justify first of all, we got to make it clear so that people won't continue to do this foolish assuming. When we speak against injustice, it does not mean that just because we're speaking against the injustice that's taken place, that we are in agreement of a crime that may have been committed. Now, guess what? The two gentlemen, because my thing is, when you look at the film and the two films that they showed, those are two different kids who went into the construction site.
Hey, but they're still black, so who cares, right?
Who cares, exactly. So it's two different individuals. Everybody can clearly see that, even though they were afraid to say so. They're two completely different kids, and both times the owner said nothing was stolen. So the worst crime that they had was trespassing. And you cannot tell me that you have the right for a citizen's arrest and shooting someone for trespassing. Get out of here. We know the law, okay? But again, so now we make it legitimate just because he was trespassing? Really? That's what you want to do? So that means that if I say the wrong thing to you, for example, I told my son, put your registration and insurance information in your visor. No longer do I tell him not to do it, and do I put my information in my compartment in the middle of my car. No. Why? Because we've been shot for just reaching to get our registration. Okay? Unjust. But then we go, and then if someone happens to see if I had a possession of a gun, then what do the white folks say in that situation? What they say is, he had a gun. The gun was in the trunk. But I'm shot, and then there's an excuse for a gun. So they make those excuses, and it's sad that those excuses are used to ostracize the real victim, which is that black young man who was killed.
Reverend, it was about, I believe, 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm not sure on the date. A young man was killed by a police officer in the presence of his wife and child in the back. He was stopped, asked for a license. I believe he opened the glove compartment, and a gun was seen. He was shot dead.
He was shot dead.
It happened that he had permit for that weapon.
Had a permit for the gun, exactly.
So the assumption is, if you are black, you are not to have a gun, legal or illegal. Yeah. Black man with a gun, automatically it's an illegal gun.
Exactly. It's sad. How about the gentleman who was shopping in Walmart in the toy section, and he picked up a toy gun because he was looking at toys, and they shot him. How about the young man who was 12 years old in the park with a toy gun? The police, and if they would have acted, they tried to act like that the kid was, they didn't know he might have been trying to shoot at us. And then the video comes out, and the kid was being a 12-year-old kid with a toy gun, and the police officer within seconds just shot him.
Was 4 or 5 seconds. I remember the case. I think his name was Rice, something, if I'm not mistaken, in the park.
In the park. So these are perfect examples of but the excuses are used to legitimize it. You can't legitimize that.
You're right.
But they do it.
Yeah, the kid shouldn't not have a gun. The kid shouldn't have a toy gun, I'm sorry.
Right.
Shouldn't have done. What about you as a police officer? You should have made sure that that thing was not a real gun. You know, what kind of process did you use that took you 3 seconds or 4 seconds to determine that was a real gun?
Right.
And it wasn't.
And it wasn't. And the amazing thing about that is set up the scenario in a different manner. And guess what? That kid doesn't get shot. Why? Because I grew up in the time when we played cops and robbers with guns, with toy guns. We played cowboys and Indians because guess what? They were ostracized and looked down on as well. But here's the thing that I've always loved about the Indians. Every time I watched programs when we were growing up, the Indians were always fighting back.
Jackie Bookman, yes, you are right. His name was Tamir Rice.
Yes.
And
it blows me away. You set up the situation completely different. And all you got to, and the completely difference is color of skin. All they had to do is be a white kid with his gun, just playing, and guess what? Everything would have been all right. He would have at least checked on him, see, hey kid, you okay? Is everything all right? No, our kids get shot.
Now, Reverend, I have to play devil's advocate here, okay? I have to give both sides because otherwise they're going to be accusing me of being a racist.
That's going to happen anyway. You're right.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to happen anyway. So, but I have to bring up the other side of the coin. I don't know if you know where I came from. I'm an African man. You know, I was born in Cape Verde Island, but went to Mozambique, right by Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Johannesburg, Rhodesia, all that, Malawi, around that area. And that's where I grew up. Okay. Yes, we had racism there. Yes, we had the apartheid there. But the worst enemy to a black man was another black man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Black lives matter, but it seems like black lives don't matter to other blacks. What do you have to say on that, on that subject, sir?
See, here's the thing. Again, we have to understand that if we don't understand our history, the history of where all this comes forth, then we're never going to be able to resolve the issue. That's the reason why, like I said, if I, as a black man living in a country that is racist against me, I have to not live desperate. Because if I live desperate, then those things that seem as if, then you guess what? It's the survival of the fittest. And so whoever I see is against me. That is my perspective. That's what comes on over history, over generations and generations of going through racism. So we have that problem. That's not the problem at the very beginning. That is a problem, as you said, is going on now. But look at all of the years and the generations in history that has caused that has perpetuated us to believe that we are less than. They have done such a good job that we many times feel the lack of value for ourselves. That's a major problem. That is one of the things that in our Black community, we have to continue to share that with each other. We can't allow what they've done to us over these years to continue to fool us into thinking that we are not of value. And so we have to get above it. Stop looking at yourself and your people as nothing just because you were taught that over generations. That's where it comes from. We're taught that, and we're crazy enough to continue to believe it. We have to stop believing it. I'm not 3/5 human. I'm very intelligent. I graduated from high school. I graduated from college. I graduated from graduate school. I have education. I'm not nothing. I am somebody. And we have to make sure that we get to our community and talk to our community in that manner so that they can stop living in that desperate situation and living the way the world wants us to. They want us to feel no value for each other.
But Reverend, aren't you doing exactly what we were blaming some white folks from doing, trying to find justification for what white criminals are doing? Now we're trying to find justification for what blacks are doing. But let's look at this.
I'm not going to justification. That's my point. That's my point. That's why I keep saying we have to live above that. It's not justified. The point is you have to get to a point where, for example, I can only use myself as an example. I grew up in rough neighborhoods, grew up in Tuckahoe at first, wonderful. Then we moved to Mount Vernon. Back in the day, Pearsall Drive was not a gated community. It was the projects, okay? It was tough, but my mother raised us to make sure that we understood that we're better than just the garbage that people purport for us to be. And guess what? We have to make sure that we teach each other that and rise up above it. So yes, there's no justification, because the time has come that we've got to grow up and we have to wake up and make sure that we tell people, listen, it's time for us to come together. Listen, we have people right now who in Yonkers, black folk, who don't even like each other. I've only been here since 2015, and so I'm from the outside in, and I see the reason why we can't get things done many times as a people, because we don't even like each other. How do you not like your own?
So, Reverend, shouldn't the change come from inside out? What about changing that mindset? What about changing that chip? What about finding the formula for us black to start loving ourselves in order to love others? If we keep killing ourselves, if we keep stabbing, if we keep robbing, we're robbing our own people, okay? And but we don't talk about it. But God forbid a white person kills a black person. Now we have the racism, the this. What about showing them, the white folks, the community in general, that we are better than this? Showing that we do not need to give the ammunition that the white folks need to say, you see, did not tell you that they act like animals? Who would kill their own brother? Who would rob their own sister?
Right.
Who would, so we need to change from the inside.
Here's what I love about that, which you made mention. I'm excited that you made mention of that. Let me tell you the reason why. Again, when you have power, you can give perspective about things, about others who don't have power that stick. Now, the reason why I bring that up is you are absolutely right. They'll say it, oh, look at the black folk killing the black folk. Look at, oh, it's a shame. It's terrible. They're killing each other. And they use that against us. Absolutely. And we should not be killing ourselves. But check out the statistics. Check out the real truth. Black on black crime is high in the black community. Highest. We kill each other the most. Guess what? Check the numbers out. Yellow on yellow kill themselves. White on white kill themselves.
Reverend,
red on red kill themselves.
I have to stop you for a second. Yes, if I go to Chinatown, and who kills most Chinese is Chinese.
Exactly.
If
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, if I go to an Irish neighborhood and there is crime in an Irish neighborhood, who robs the Irish is the Irish. But in Yonkers, we are a diverse. Let's talk about Yonkers for a second.
Great.
We are a diverse and inclusive city. Even
diverse. I don't know about inclusive. Diverse.
Okay, we might disagree in that. But we are a diverse. Most of the violent crimes in Yonkers at least in this side of town. And look, I go everywhere. You know, some people say, why are you only on the black neighborhood? That's false. I go everywhere, okay? Whatever the story takes me, I go, and I don't even know if it's the victim is white, yellow, pink, you know, blue. I have no idea. I just go to cover the story. But I see that most of the violent crimes are committed by other blacks. I notice that when I go and cover stories, if I go and cover a story in a black neighborhood, the guys that very often get a little bit out of control with me and are blacks. If I go to cover a story in a white neighborhood and I see a white family, what they do is they're in a corner somewhere crying, okay? They don't come at me trying to break my equipment or do this or do that. They just go in a corner, cry and mourn forever it's lost. So we need, I think we need community leaders such as yourself and others to implement that. We need to show that we are better. We cannot just demand, okay? We cannot just demand to be treated differently. We have to show them, look, we are different. We are as equal as you, and very often we are better than you, okay? So treat me as such and pass judgment on me based on my character and not based on the color of my skin, okay? That's my point of view.
Right, and I understand that, but again, like I said, you have to, we too many times compartmentalize and take things and set it in its compartment rather than understanding that there are effects and there are reasons that have been put down on a people that causes them to be where they are. All you did again was express my point, and that is desperation. When you are put in these situations, guess what? So I'm at the point now, the blacks in their neighborhoods doing that, they see you with a camera, they go, why? Because we don't trust anybody. You've been treated this way for so long, who are you going to trust? And plus, they caused you to think that you're nothing. So guess what? I don't trust my own people. I don't trust you. I don't trust the cameraman. I don't trust the white guy. I don't trust the red guy. I don't trust anybody. Why? Because I have always been at the bottom of the barrel. Always have been. We're the original minorities. And yet, and as more minorities come, guess what they do? The minorities come and they put us at the bottom. New minorities, we're at the bottom. We're always at the bottom. So when you're at the bottom and you're desperate, okay, you're going to do desperate things. That's again, my argument again is I always share with my people, stop. You got to get above being desperate because as you just made mention, that perpetuates a certain view about you that causes people to say, see how they act like animals? See, they're doing this, they're doing that. They don't care that you're in a desperate situation. All they care about is they're killing each other, they're stealing from each other, they're doing this, they're doing that. And the desperation is mulled over, and those acts are the things that people share.
Now, Reverend, let me make it clear, you know, so the people who are watching us don't take my questions in the wrong way. The question that I'm making is not because I'm doubting what you're saying. I'm just asking the question that would come from the other side in order for you to articulate, okay, the reasons why, okay? So I'm not taking sides here. I'm just asking the questions because you are a highly intelligent man and you can articulate the issue and tell the why to too many things. Now, I have here a statement from Jackie Bookman. Jackie, you said, you made a short comment that said, yes, you do. I have no idea what you mean by the yes, you do. So audience, if you are going to pose a question, please pose the question fully so we understand exactly what you mean. Because remember, what we were saying earlier. I cannot go in Trump's mind and know what he means. I cannot go in your mind either and know what you mean by your question. So please phrase your question completely and fully so I understand and I can ask the Reverend.
Amen. And let me just say this also, because we're talking about the other thing that that causes harm as well and causes that desperation is even the way in which, and in all due respect, because we talked about already that how I have wonderful people who are police officers. They're police officers and they're great people who are in my family, friends, those things. But many times in our communities, in our urban communities, we have policing that's lacking. So when you have policing that's lacking, guess what? They can call in a white community, boom, 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 take care of it. Call in a black community, and it's happened to me where we've called and nobody, and they move slowly and they come in and then sometimes they'll even assume that I may be the perpetrator and I'm the one who made the call. So you have all of those things that's also frightening in our communities as well. Now, like I said, let me make it clear. We're not talking about that the police officers are there. I love police. I need them to protect me, okay? But the point is that those are issues as well in our community that we need to be mindful of. And we want to develop a better relationship with your policing.
But since we are talking about policing, I think we need to make it clear that when police comes to a particular scene, they don't come to negotiate with you. I'm not meaning when you are the person who's calling, when you are the person who they're calling for. They don't come to negotiate with you. And sometimes things get out of control because they give you a direct order, and sometimes folks refuse to comply. Even I sometimes, they tell me to go over there, but I'm a reporter. I want to get that shot. Yeah, I want to get that shot. Yeah. But I'm not the person who they call the police for. But my suggestion is, look, if the police comes to a scene and you are the person who they called for, or the police asks you to do something, look, at that particular time, it's not the time to argue with them, because you will not win. They will take you in, and then you're going to present your case to a judge. But until you present your case to a judge, you have to hire an attorney. You have, you might be in jail for a few hours and all that. So making a confrontation at that moment, I don't think it's wise. Yes, your rights might be violated, but guess what? That cop at that moment doesn't care about that. He's going to take you in, and then you're going to tell the judge that your rights were violated. Now it's up to the judge to say yes, no. And even if they rule in your favor, that officer nothing is going to happen to him.
Yeah, he's not changing his disposition. He's still going to feel the way that he is. And if he happens to be racist, he's still going to remain racist, even if he loses the case or whatever the case may be. I mean, I give a perfect example. When I was stopped in Bronxville. Guess what? You better pull over. The police officer assumed I had to be some kind of criminal, pulled me over, and I did everything that he asked me to do. And then after he finished and realized, oh, this is a upstanding citizen, I was able to share with him in my kind way. Oh, I know why you stopped me, sir. I understand. I understand the color of my skin. And he looked at me, and I'm going, and he couldn't even defend himself because he knew why he stopped me. This black man going through Bronxville I happen to be, as a minister, I most of the time, I'm dressed, I look the part, but there are times when we ministers dress down like everybody else, and I was famous for wearing my hat on backwards. That's what I do. I just like wearing my hat backwards. Okay. So you assume that I was some kind of thug with my nice Cadillac that I was driving. So I had to be some kind of thug. Once you find out that I was the pastor of Shiloh Baptist Church in Tuckahoe, then all of a sudden things change.
Well, you know, there is a comment here from Margaret Coleman. No, not to negotiate. I guess this comes into my statement. No, not to negotiate. However, many have built in constructive of bias. Margaret, I'm not doubting you at all. We know that, you know, and I agree with 100%. All that I'm saying is if you are too confrontational with the police officer at that moment, you will not take the best of it. You will go in, and then you can deal with that bias later. So that's all that I'm saying. I'm not trying to find justifications. I'm not here to condemn the police. I'm here to interview the Reverend, talk about issues in general, whatever those issues are, but also very interested in not just talking about the issues, but also pointing out possible solutions, possible resolves for those things.
And that's what we have to make sure that in the midst of our conversations, and the first thing that has to happen when it comes down to resolution, the first thing that has to happen is that everyone has to admit that there's an issue. I mean, and when things, and so that if we all admit that there is an issue of racism, major rate, you take, for example, the things that happen even in our own city. When things happen, I will go and inquire, just like I inquired about the grocery store incident. I inquired about it and shared how I felt and what I saw. All of that, wonderful. I did all of that because I saw injustice taking place. But my problem is that I inquired about it, but no, I heard nothing. It's complete silence from the highest office. The mayorship didn't hear nothing. Council, even that district, nothing. My thing is that we should be, when we see something or anything going on, we should speak up. We're not speaking against or making it sound as if shoplifting is okay. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. You need to go to jail if you get caught doing something crazy. But you don't need the other things that go forth, and we need to speak to those things. And we have had those things that happen, like I said, with this. We've had in other stores where people have been treated not fairly. And guess what? Everybody wants to come, for example, to me, because I'm president of the NAACP, and speak to me privately and say, that wasn't right. But guess what? You're not speaking openly. So it's not going to be resolved if you don't speak openly. Yeah. Stand by my side.
Yes. You know, Reverend, I was going to bring that up as well with the latest incidents in Yonkers, specifically Getty Square in Yonkers, the west side of Yonkers. We had multiple incidents there of people of color being treated in a biased way. Okay, yes, like you said, shoplifting is not right. I remember when we had the incident at the supermarket. Prior to that, we had another incident at the beauty supply, also involved a young black woman. At no point, no one tried to justify shoplifting. Shoplifters should be prosecuted. Correct. They should pay for the consequences of it. The point was with the excessive force used. The problem was with the way that police, in my opinion, handled that situation.
Correct.
Okay. They were not concerned with any other type of evidence. Personally, I had a video that I wanted to show the police officer that showed the incident from a different angle. Police said no, they did not need it because they already had enough video from the store. I asked myself, well, if you're investigating a crime, wouldn't you be interested in seeing all the information,
That's right,
all the evidence in regards to that crime? Or are you taking the word for it from a store? No one is saying or justifying that stealing is right. What we are saying is that the use of excessive force, or people thinking that they are law enforcement, judges, juries, and executioner at the same time. If police officers cannot continue to use force against a subject that is already subdued, what makes them think that the staff of a supermarket can, because they assumed or they thought, or
right,
even if there is evidence that they were stealing? What about just hold them there?
that's right. Detain them. Exactly.
Yeah, what about just detain them
That's right.
until police arrived? What about just when you noticed that they were stealing? What about placing one security at the door, at the front door, and another one in the back door? And
Right.
when they tried to make an exit with stuff that were not paid for, hold them there at that time.
That's right.
Why assume that why they are still in eyes that they were stealing? I very often go to stores, pick something like a wallet, I put it in my back pocket to see how it fits. Not
Right.
that I intend to steal that wallet.
Correct.
You know, it's just I'm looking for the fit, and I walk around to see if I feel it like it's a little bulky or not. So I don't think that the police, Yonkers PD, in that particular instance, acted properly. Now, I'm not going to say that they acted that way because they were racist, but because they were trying always to protect the business owners. They were not interested in anything else but protect that store owner.
And that's where, again, training, better training, even for the police departments, because we have to make sure in that situation that was sad. I mean, it was sad. I mean, even to the point where you're taking a man out in handcuffs and there's a perpetrator kicking at the guy, and that's not important to you. You have a video that we saw ourselves, viewers, when we saw it, we're going like, oh my goodness. Imagine having someone, you stole some shrimp, and the penalty for stealing shrimp before the police get there is to get kicked in the head, get thrown down and kicked in the head. Wow, are you serious? That's not the way it's supposed to be. And so if you do a full investigation, you check out all of the evidence so that anyone who acted unseemly are prosecuted. So the shoplifters are prosecuted, but guess what? The perpetrators who threw them down and did the things that they did should also be prosecuted. We have to be fair about all of it, but you're not going to find that out if you don't do complete investigation. You had it right there, and you could have done it.
And Reverend, and there was even one of them who picked up a weapon, and he swung at the person with the stick. I was asked, did he hit the person? I said no, because he missed it, because he didn't aim right, but he did swing. And that's how I was able to film it, because when I saw the swing and I turned the camera around, at that moment, there was already an employee trying to move him away, but he did actually charge. So the intent that was there, he actually tried to hit the person. He just happened to miss it.
Yeah.
So, and this could have escalated. If he had missed it, this will be a whole different case today.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you saw the interview that we had with the store afterwards, where they accepted that they did wrong. They accepted that they used excessive force. They accepted that they're going to take, or they took, disciplinary actions against those involved. They suspended 2 or 3 people for 2 days, one of them for 1 day. they were going to drop the charges, which I think they never did, but I cannot tell you that for sure. Do you feel that the interview or what they said was genuine, sir?
Again, you can only go on what they said. One of the things that I shared with them, once I talked to them and had my investigation with the NAACP, we did share with them a letter of what we saw and how we felt it was best to handle. One of the things that we did ask them to do as a recommendation was to give a public apology, and with them doing that with you, that was a perfect example of doing part of that. But you still need to come to the Black community, which is where we represent NAACP, and we've recommended for them to come so they can share with us at the appropriate time to make sure that we have that done. So we've heard that. I did listen intently, heard them make that apology. But the other thing that we did make mention that we disagree with respectfully is that the gentleman shouldn't be just suspended.
What do you think should have been done?
Those gentlemen should be relieved of their duties. That's just, I mean, the reality is that you're showing your behavior, and you blatantly put your hands on someone, threw them down, kicked them, did everything. That is the most degrading and violent. And that's your employee? Really? That's the reputation that as a store owner you want to have? No, give the real solid message, and that is relieve him of his duties. There's plenty of people who that he can go forth and hire as well. As a matter of fact, I know that he even the owner made mention about hiring some better security and those kind of things, and also changing from 6 months of training to every 3 months of training. All of that is fine, wonderful. But the only issue, real major issue that I have is those 3 gentlemen need to be relieved.
Yes, on the interview, you're correct. He spoke about the training. He spoke about a whole different things that they are going to change. They did hire a new security team. Actually, I know the person who's in charge of it. But the community is demanding that those involved be fired. Because look, it was not just the physical part, was also get that N out of here. Yeah. There was a whole bunch of racial slurs.
Right.
And the racial slurs were not just against me, because I'm not the only Black man in Yonkers. So it was against every Black man in Yonkers. Right. Because if they think that way about me, they think about the others. Now, on their defense, let me point it out that talking to the manager, he told me, look, the guy doesn't even know what the N means. He has no concept. My answer was, look, if he has concept or not, it's indifferent.
Yeah. Doesn't matter to me whether you claim that he doesn't know it or not. The reality is he felt free enough and emboldened enough to use it. So guess what? It's not, okay, I may not realize that going 75 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone, okay, it was wrong. I didn't realize it. Okay, I didn't realize it. Oh boy, I didn't realize it. Guess what? I'm still going to suffer the consequences. I'm still going to get that ticket. I'm still, matter of fact, they're going to, because it was 75 and it was over 20 miles an hour, guess what? I'm not only going to get the ticket, but I got to show up for court. And imagine you walking into court and saying, oh, but I didn't know. Okay, suffer the consequences, pay the penalty.
Well, an answer here to Tiffany Ortiz. Tiffany says, is the new security team biased or neutral? You said you know the security team guard. Now, what I said I know is the guy who's in charge of the security team. And I know him for a few years now, long before this thing. It's somebody that worked with me occasionally. And as far as I know, he never showed me any tendencies for racial or bias or bigotry. If he did, he wouldn't be a friend of mine, because I don't have friends that are racists. I don't have friends that are bigot to black people. So no, I have no reason to believe that he is. I think that he will do a good job now, but that's not for me to decide. It's the community that needs to decide if the apology is accepted, if the new security team is good enough. It's not for me. I just give the news. It's up to you to reach your conclusions.
The other thing is, Ru, is that the new security team is not the issue. The new security team is not the issue, because first of all, I live by, first of all, you're talking about giving people opportunity. If I want a chance, an opportunity, I need you to give me that chance. But if you have a new security team, we can't automatically be against the new security team. They're new. And it's not fair. That's the same thing we would be doing just as the racist does. He's already made a conclusion about them without giving them a chance. So you don't speak against the security team. The issue is the individuals who showed us who they were. When people show you who they are, believe them. And so we have individuals who showed us who they were. And that is the reason why the community wants them relieved.
Yep. No, but again, also we need to know that security team, it's a team to deal with loss prevention. Policies, training, and all the other things that encompass this problem comes from the top. The owner or the organization has to put in place certain policies that will deal with situations like this. They cannot allow the butcher, the guy from the bread, the deli department to jump out of the counter, come and participate in a loss prevention case. No, they need policies. They need to be racial sensitive to issues. They need to learn about the language. They need to make people feel comfortable when they go shopping in the business. People complain that every time they go there, they feel like they are thieves. They have people behind them looking back and forth to see if they're stealing anything. Just because we're black does not mean that we're thieves, Right. Let me shop in peace. Let me buy my stuff. And if you think I'm stealing, stop me at the exit and then call legal, law enforcement and deal with me.
Well, absolutely. Like you said, you have to change the way in which you manage your store. And when it comes down to that, if you want to secure it, and I understand you don't want anybody stealing, and it is going to be a loss to you if you let people get away with crimes such as that. But you have to implement policy and procedures that is in the interest of you when it comes down to stealing, while at the same time it shows interest in your customers who are coming in. Now, if you're living in or have a store in an area where the majority are people of color, that is absolutely amazing that you would set up your store and have security guards standing in the middle of aisles or things of that sort. That's crazy. That's not going to make me feel comfortable as a consumer as I'm going to the grocery store to get some food. I'm walking by and I'm looking at this guy and he's looking at me and he's watching me as I pick up a can of pork and beans to look at. And I'm not comfortable. You're not making people comfortable in that manner. As you may mention, you can have plenty of people You can have persons at the each exit to keep an eye. And then here's the other thing. You have, because we've all been there, you have a multiplicity of cameras, and you have them in your camera room with it all up for you to see. You have those things. You have it. Use it. Use it the way it should be used, rather than to have people looking like they're being intimidated just shopping to go get a loaf of bread. That's not appropriate. And it's very disturbing, especially in the Black community.
Reverend, this interview took us a little longer than I expected. It was a great conversation. Thank you for taking the time. Once again, let me make it clear to our audience that my questions were just posed in a way to make the Reverend explain, engage, articulate the other side for those that will think differently than us. So that was my goal. Reverend, thank you very much. Now, in closure, Reverend, is there anything that perhaps I forgot to mention that you'd like to mention?
The only thing I think that comes to mind for me at this point really is just to, because I am a minister and I am a pastor, and I'm also a historian when it comes down to my people. So I'm very accurate and versed in those areas. And one of the things that I was a little taken aback was the statement that was made. I think it was Brother Damon made mention about the ministers and how they didn't open the doors for Dr. King. Churches weren't open for him because, you know, they were afraid. And some people were afraid, naturally, absolutely. But guess what? That doesn't mean most of them were. Many of the people that marched with King were ministers. Many of the people who were marching and allowing him to go to different places to speak were in churches. Let me give you a perfect example. In May of 1965, guess where Martin Luther King preached? At the Messiah Baptist Church in Yonkers, New York, standing up for workers. So we can't make those statements as if none of the ministers supported. None of the churches supported. That's not true. There were people that were afraid on all aspects, but there were many ministers and churches who did stand up with him as well. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear, that that saying that none of them is not true. Many of them didn't, but also many of them did.
Let me just give a shout out to my good friend, Jeffrey Mayer. I think you know him. Jeffrey, I'm so happy that you fully recovered and that you are back in action.
Wonderful, wonderful.
It's wonderful. Guys, don't forget that elections have consequences. So come out and vote. Yeah. Make sure you vote right. Make sure that you vote based on how would you say it? The word escaped. Yeah, in conscience. Don't vote based on who you like, or it's a nice guy, he makes good jokes. Vote based on record. Okay, make sure you vote right. Don't forget the census 2020. It's important.
Extremely important.
Extremely important.
In our city, we have to make sure that everybody counts.
Exactly. Everybody counts. Yeah. So thank you, Reverend. Until next time, we should do this more often. Great conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. And until next time. Okay, that's it.
All right.
I think it was excellent. I think it was pretty good.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, I had to ask those other questions because.
Oh no, absolutely. I was not offended. I already know what has to be asked so that we can clearly get the opportunity to share and articulate where we are. Because a lot of times when people, for example, when we're speaking it for, you know, Black power and Black this and Black that, and we don't give the whole picture or and where it comes from. And it does sound like, if you don't give a opportunity to explain it, it does sound like you may be making excuses. No, we're not making excuses, but we're giving you the reasons why and where it comes from, and we all can come together and make a difference. Then after that, then that one that's a criminal, he's just a criminal because he's a criminal.
Right. So the reason why I want to ask those questions, because I know that in some folks of the white collar, they might be thinking about that. So say, let me ask the question, let me represent them, and let the Reverend articulate. So, you know, so people can say, well, it's fair and square. It's asking questions from both sides. Right. So it was more like to educate than actually my own opinion. You know how I feel, but exactly. I have to ask the other side as well.
Correct.
So thank you, sir. And until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.